Okay, so how do you say woman in English, and why do some students say ooman? This is really frustrating as a teacher who's just starting out and you wonder, why do they do this? Hopefully, you'll be able to get an idea about why students are doing this so that you can help them learn how to say these words correctly. So, it starts out, I'm just going to use Japanese as an example because I speak Japanese a little bit, and so it's easier for me to think of examples. But they start out asking, how do you say woman in English? And someone else says, easy, just make a W sound like in Japanese, because there's a lot of sounds in Japanese that have W. Really? It's that easy? Yes. That's great. And then they have a sentence like this. Now, there are several words in here that they're going to do correctly, but the frustrating part comes when some of the words just aren't going to come out right. And for some reason, they won't say would or woman or words like that. And they'll say ud and uman. And this can be really frustrating for the learner and also for the teacher because sometimes you can't understand the sentence they're making. So the problem comes from the English W and the Japanese W sound being very different and working differently and having different rules. It has to do with phonotactics if you're a linguistics student. But anyway, so you look at a word like watashi, warau, warui. These words all begin with wa, with this wa sound. Then winka, golden week, golden hour, sandwich, renewal, waiter. So you'll notice how many of these words are loan words for those of you who are Japanese speakers. This word comes from English, English, English. But you can look at these words and it's a little deceptive and you might think, oh, well, look, there's a W sound. But actually it's not a W, it's more of like the vowel oo and then e, ooing, ooinka. So that's where part of the trouble comes in, is that Japanese is trying to accommodate some of these sounds that they don't have, and they do the best that they can. If you remember from that vowel video I did, and if you haven't seen it, I recommend you go watch it. But there are about 15 vowel sounds in English. And the trouble is Japanese only has 5. So they have e, o, and u. And even the u is a little bit different from ours because in English it's rounded, but they don't round it in Japanese. So these are the words that would fit in that category. Now, you'll notice here there actually isn't a word like woi, but anyway, you'll notice that Japanese has words that have a W-like sound at the beginning, like in the word gouden week and waiter and watashi. And so these words, they sound like they've got a W in them, and then they're pretty close, but the trouble is there are no words over on this category of vowels. So they don't have a word that starts with a w sound at the beginning of like oo or o. And so that presents problems. So words like why, women, white, and weak, those words sound like, or they start with a sound that a Japanese speaker would be more able to say. But then words like would and woman and woo, there aren't any words in Japanese that have that sound combination of like a rounded sound like w and then oo, woo, or woman, or would. So that gets to be really difficult for them. And it's the same thing with an English speaker. They're trying to say this word. I'm going to space it out for you so you can see it better. They're trying to say taberareru, but they're too tripped up by the romanization. They're looking in their phrase book or the dictionary, and they're like, oh, well, look, there's an R there. So they think, oh, I can just pronounce this like an English R, and they say taberareru. And you end up sounding like Scooby-Doo. So that's why I try to tell students, stop using translators and don't use dictionaries that romanize or that turn the second language into a language like your first language. So it just doesn't work. It doesn't work to pronounce this like English, taberararu. It just doesn't work. It sounds really bad. So that's something to think about, is that every sound in English follows English rules, and every sound in Japanese follows Japanese rules. So don't think of English in terms of your first language. Don't think like, oh, this works just like my first language. Actually, it probably doesn't. And the more you think of it like that, the more difficulty you're going to have. So I hope that helps you, and good luck pronouncing woman and would correctly. And just remember that you always round them. Whenever you make W in English, it's always rounded. You always have to go wah, wah. Bring your lips really close together and say wah. And so anyway, good luck and have a good one.